This is Curious Brain Farts.
Welcome to Curious Brain Farts, the show where two ordinary people get curious about something. What does Wikipedia say a curious brain fart is? Who cares? What's our definition?
A curious brain fart is something that pops into your brain unprompted, often. Sometimes it brews for a while. And you just have a thought about something. And that's really all we're doing. We're talking about things that we have thought about, topics that we find interesting. And maybe you will too.
All right.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
And you?
I'm a solid 9 out of 10.
Oh, yeah. Nice. What's 10 like? Nightmare.
I don't know. Ask me after I finish my cup of coffee. So, the burning question in the room. Oh, nice slurp of the tea.
Nice cup of tea.
Lovely. The burning question is, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, we should probably engage the random theme generator.
Roger.
Otherwise,
Who's going to pull the lever this time, you or me?
I can't remember who did it last time. So why don't you do it?
Okay.
Go.
Random theme generator. Random theme generator.
And the answer.
I noticed a dip in the lights, by the way,
Did
when
you?
you did that.
Right. Maybe I yanked it a bit hard, as it very much were.
I think it's because of the number of quantum computers that are required. Do you know what I mean?
I do. I very much do know what you mean. And all of said quantum computers have given us a topic, and the topic is failure.
Well, you got that wrong.
Such a loser.
Such a loser. That's a failure.
I'm just going to look it up on
You're just
Oxford, England.
shaming me.
Shame. Right, let's have a little look at failure. Let's look that fella in the face and see what happens. So, a failure is a lack of success, the neglect or omission of expected or required action. So, your failure to comply with the basic rules, Paul.
I get you.
So, there we are. It's a lack. It's a lacking thing. It's a absence of. You did not do the expected thing, or
Right. So it's very, very deficit.
very, very deficit.
Interesting. Okay. So what's to be curious about failure? How else can we look at failure?
I think it's one or the other. That's the thing about. So what's on the other side of failure? Success, learning. For me personally, my choice is to say failure just isn't a thing for me, because I just don't find it helpful to have that looming
Right.
on my horizon in any way, frankly. And I think for some people it might be a motivator, or it might spur them on. For me personally, it doesn't, and so I've removed that word from my vocabulary. If things rarely go exactly the way that I think they will, and they always do things and go somewhere. And sometimes there's lots of things to be learned, and sometimes there are struggles and challenges along the way. But just looking at things through the lens of, is it a success or is it a failure? I don't know that anything is ever wholly one or wholly the other. We kind of hang out somewhere in the middle all the time. I just don't, for me personally, find it a label that's very helpful.
Yeah. And it's a very commonly used term. People talk a lot about success and failure, they seem to come hand in hand.
Yep.
And one of the things I did a while ago was posted on LinkedIn from my personal account about the failure paradox.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this idea that for literally everyone who has achieved success in whatever form that is a combination of lots of failure to achieve the thing in the first instance.
Right.
You know, you don't become a global mega star of something, if that's your definition of success, the first time you sing into a microphone or pick up an instrument. You have to fall over lots and lots and lots of times. Stand-up comedy, I think, is a really great example of something like that. You know, they fail a lot, and they have to have a good relationship with failure to be able to not see it as something full of shame and something that is deficit. Is actually starting to highlight the ways in which you can move forwards differently to achieve an incrementally different outcome as you go forwards. So a failure is not necessarily something that you need to bounce back from. It's something that can help you to bounce forwards.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, the courage required. Sorry, everyone, that's the dog picking up his ball, which is underneath my microphone stand. Many apologies, best wishes to you. The courage to, let's take stand-up comic as an example, to stand there and do your material, which may or may not vibe with the audience that night. It may go down like a lead balloon, but the big stand-up comics, they take their material and they take it out to smaller venues and they road test it. Mm-hmm. And the objective is not to rewrite the whole, 45-minute show or whatever it is. The objective is to say, okay, that bit really worked, that bit really didn't work. And, it takes time. It takes time to click. It takes time to work. So, I think failure as I'm still quite allergic to the word. I'm searching in my brain for another word, but things not going the way you expect them to, or the way you like them to, is, I think, an everyday occurrence on all sorts of levels for all of us. It's just an embedded part of our human experience. And I think often it's easier to look in those more binary terms of success and failure from the outside. Mm-hmm. And you see somebody who is, from your perspective, at the top of their game, for example, somebody who's a global megastar, somebody who's very wealthy, somebody who's scaled the dizzy heights of a career ladder in some form or another. Now that's you bringing your perception of what it might look like to be successful and projecting that onto the other person's reality. Now we've got to just appreciate that is nothing more than our perception, thoughts and feelings about it. It's not actually real in that sense. Do you know what I mean? So these terms, these words can be very, very emotive, but they're not, they only have the weighting that we choose to give them. So what I'm saying to myself is, if that word is loaded for me, then what that's doing is showing me that maybe I've got a little bit of work to do.
Yeah. And, just thinking about the definition again, I don't remember exactly what it was, and it was very definitive. Failed to follow due process or something along those lines.
It's either a lack of success or you didn't have the follow the expected procedural ways of doing things.
And it's just so definitive. And I think, like with anything that we're trying to get better at, healthy eating, exercise, something creative, reading, an instrument, anything that we're trying to get better at, our jobs, this podcast, I can imagine us looking back when we're 500 episodes down and going, "Ooh, look at that."
Amateur hour at the beginning.
How much we've grown.
Yeah.
And without having... You see, one of the things with failure that I've been working on a lot is that it can prevent me from starting.
The fear of it, you mean?
Mm-hmm. The fear of failure would stop me from starting something. Don't write that post, don't say that thing, don't start a podcast with your sister, don't do this, that, or the other. And it's the shame and judgment associated with failure. Where does the shame come from?
Good question.
And the judgment, like you were just describing, that is me applying something to you. You failed to make that point well last time. Actually, you might feel like you've perfectly nailed that point. So it's really interesting, the shame and judgment, how that creeps in.
Yes, because it's a measurement thing. You've either measured up or you haven't. That's the definition, right? And therefore, there's a judgment. There's some kind of measure, and you've either succeeded or you haven't. And it's just never that simple, is it? Let's just take something really... So I was talking to our sister yesterday.
Who's a legend.
Who is a massive legend. And we were...
Other legends are available, by the way.
They are. And we did the classic thing, you ring someone up to say something specific to them. She did this, and we had this lovely conversation, and we chatted. We were both walking our respective dogs in different places, not together. And we were on the phone to each other for, I don't know, about 40 minutes. And we went to hang up because she'd just picked her youngest up from school, and she went, wait, don't go. This is why I actually rang you. But the reason that conversation pinged in my head is because we were talking about exams, tests, different, because some of our children are still in education. And when you're in education, that concept of failure, there's clear metrics, aren't there? You're measured all the time, actually, when you're a child in education about, well, that measured up and that didn't measure up, and that was good enough and that wasn't good enough. And, the impact that has on a young person, especially if then, for whatever reason, not able to jump through the hoop,
whatever the hoop is.
Doesn't matter what the hoop is, they can then start to internalise and say, well, I'm not good enough. I am a failure. And that's when they're not the failure. The system that they're in is the failure because it's elicited this feeling. But the point is the external things, measures, whatever they are in life, are not designed by us and are not really about us, but they're, in inverted commas, this objective measurement, whatever that is, and then we either measure up or we don't, and we get all these cues all the time from quite a young age. Yeah. You're either in or you're not. And so we're pack animals, we want to be in, and so I don't think there's any surprise that we all carry some real shame and fear around failure because we haven't measured up and we're not good enough in some way.
I feel like it's from a very, very young age. A very young age is connected to right and wrong, good and bad. So if you have failed to eat your dinner, that's bad.
Yeah.
You've failed to sit nicely at the table. You've failed to sit still during story time in school because you're full of beans. And because you're not meeting someone else's expectation, Expected expectation.
I guess good England.
I was expecting that from you.
Expect the unexpected.
So because you're not able to meet whatever standard it is that has been imposed, there comes the opens the door for the stories around, well, you're not good enough.
Yeah.
You can't do this, you can't do that. So therefore, focus on the things you can do. Protect yourself and do less. And I think for me, measurement and like even writing down goals can sometimes be very triggering. What if I fail? It's the first question. And you're like, and what if I succeed? And then tuning into, so what is there to be afraid of with this fear of not meeting a goal? And I feel like this connects to, I'm sure we've talked about this before, about motivation and the difference between success and failure motivation.
Yes.
And so success motivation, it needs to be challenging. If it's not challenging enough, I'm not going to bother. So I need to struggle to get to the next bit, and that's the value for a success motivated person. For a failure motivated person, they set something so incredibly high that there can't be any shame if you've not managed to reach it in the time frame.
Yeah.
So therefore, it's okay if I, inverted commas, fail. I have a secret goal that I'm trying to get to, but I tell you this much bigger one. And it's, because these early lessons or imprints that we're given, I think it's interesting to see how it affects people so differently and what they tune into. Because for some people, it's the incentive to do more, go harder.
Yes.
For some people, it's the motivation to avoid. Well,
Yes.
I'm not going to do that again.
That's right.
So I'll steer clear of that because I don't like failing. And they excel in other areas. For some, it means, complete switch off.
Yes.
Well, I can't do any of these things.
Yeah. And it's funny because I was having a conversation with Mum earlier today. I was at Mum's having a cup of tea before I came over to Paul's, and one of Mum's friends was there showing me this brilliant video of her granddaughter swimming in this swimming gala. She was swimming the most beautiful butterfly stroke, absolutely wonderful. And Mum's friend was so proud, and she was showing, and it was lovely. And it made me think then, when I was younger, I loved ballet and I loved playing music and I loved singing and I loved swimming. And swimming, our sister and I, we loved swimming. We absolutely adored it. But it wasn't enough for us to just swim. We had to compete. We had to succeed or fail. We couldn't just swim because we loved it. I couldn't just dance because I loved it. You have to do the exams. I couldn't just learn a musical instrument. No, you have to do grades 1, 2 and 3. And I didn't want to do grades 1, 2 and 3 because for me, I was like, oh, what if I mean, looking back, that's not how I processed it, obviously, as a child. But looking back, I was a bit like, oh dear, that feels unsafe for me. But there was actually no avenue as a child to not compete and not either succeed or fail. And so I just stopped doing the things because I was being pushed all the time. And I tried all these different things that I loved. I still love all of these things. However, as a young person, you are pushed into this place by grown-ups who possibly should know better. You can't just do it because you love it. You're pushed to succeed or fail.
And I'm thinking about how primal failure is. Because at one point it meant you're dead.
Yes.
You
If
can't
failed to get out of the way.
you can't forage properly, you'll die. You can't hunt and kill something, you'll die. And it's just like fear and all these things that are still really, really connected back to these primal instincts that were designed to help us survive and keep us safe. And how distorted they've become over time.
Yeah, it's so true.
So I can't get out my head, and I'm grateful, about this failure paradox, that without failing, you can't grow. And even if you're averse to failure, so what do you think about this, Lou? That you don't like the word, and yet without you making mistakes and getting things wrong, you're not able to grow.
Yeah. I think one of the things about failure is it feels like the end of a road. You have failed. So it's quite, it's the other end of the parentheses. It's the full stop at the end of the sentence. Actually,
Might just be a comma.
it might just be a comma. So this time it didn't work out, comma. This is what I've learned. And therefore next time I'm wiser in these ways. I can vibe with completely. It's when it's, the finality of it, and that, of course, that's our choice, and we're hardwired for negativity, and we've talked about this before as well. And that's another primitive thing, right? Watch out, keep yourself safe. Watch out, watch out, watch out, and we're hardwired to see it, and so we're much more tuned in to the failures than we are the successes. And when I'm coaching people, I really notice the negativity of people's language. And I call them ping words. And I just notice, often they'll say either exactly the same word, like, for example, failure, or this is stupid, or that's silly. And they'll say it time after time. You're welcome for the singing.
Wow.
All those music lessons really paid off, guys.
Just took the headphones off for a minute.
My ears are bleeding. So that's completely subconscious. They're not aware they're saying that, but it's these micro negativities all the time.
Well, it's undermining, isn't it?
The words they're choosing to use to talk about themselves and their experience is undermining them all the time, edging them into a negativity.
And maybe just to sort of expand on that, it's all of us. There are very, very few people on the planet, I haven't met one yet, who doesn't have these moments, who doesn't find themselves doing exactly all of these things. So it's not like we're immune to any of this stuff.
No.
So, because what I find so helpful with the coaching is it allows me to reflect as well on whatever the thing is that's going on for the person. So just like you were describing about, using lots of deficit language and, well, I haven't managed to do this and I didn't do that and oh my gosh and da-da-da, and just noticing the thought process and asking questions around that allows me to also tune into and raise my own self-awareness. Because I think one of the things with failure, self-awareness is critically important. Where is it coming from? How is it serving? Because sometimes, depending on who you are, it will serve you in different ways. And sometimes it doesn't serve you, and therefore reframing that. There's that old thing from 1,000 million years ago, to fail means a first attempt in learning. And it's like, right, that's a bit cheesy. And actually, it's painfully true. I have a horrible feeling we've mentioned this before. There was that Ed Sheeran clip on Jonathan Ross.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I think we did. And he played his first track, and it was like, what? From his first recording that he'd ever done, and it was shonky.
Yeah.
And so you could go, well, that was a bit of a failure. However, look at the guy now, using those things to grow. So it's this reframe, which I think is so, so powerful. And
turning the word fail into an acronym is, of course, a reframe. And so what we're trying to do, and this brings me back a bit to where we started, we're trying to reframe and couch this very loaded, very judgment-laden word in different... For me, personally, I'm just putting the word down. And I'm going, I'm going to make mistakes and I'm going to get things wrong. And I'm going to try things that don't work. And I'm going to try things that do work. And the important thing is that I show up and that I try. And my experience tells me that things are going to work out. I don't necessarily know the minutiae of how they're going to work out, and they will. So, there's some trust and stuff like that. For me, trying to reframe something that's so loaded, personally for me, it doesn't work. That's why I put it down.
Yeah. So, no idea how long we've been gas bagging. I'm just thinking, how's it serving? Notice that. Sometimes the word is not helpful. Sometimes beating yourself over the head isn't helpful. Sometimes it is because it's motivating. So just, first of all, notice what's going on for you. How does that feel? What's it doing for you? And then become aware. To raise your awareness in, like you've just described, ways of you dealing with, let's call it the category of failure. Not the word.
The things that
the
are
little
not
setbacks,
perfect.
the things that don't work quite right, and there's loads of different ways of doing things, and often sharing stuff with other people will tend to find that people will all have similar experiences, although different, and we can learn a lot from those conversations.
Indeed.
Wow.
Amazing.
Hopefully that was a massive failure, because then that means we're growing.
This could also be one of the things that's gone superbly well.
Exactly. And
it
that's
could
thanks
be
to the previous failures.
And it could be a bit of both.
Could be a bit of both.
Right?
Yeah. Yes. Well, let's use and. This was a failure and a success.
This was neither a failure or a success.
It was bland. Well,
that was great.
amazing.
Beautiful.
So, see you next time.
Yeah. Catch you on the flippity floppity.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Goodbye now.
Bye.
Lou, just before we go, I know we've already said bye. However, coming back again, hello. Should people want to offer some suggestions for themes for us to get curious about, how can they get in touch?
Excellent question, Paul.
Thank you.
I'm glad you asked. I'm glad you popped back to ask said question.
I was partway out the door.
Yeah, well, quite. And the answer is this. You can email us, dear listeners, at curiousbrainfarts@gmail.com.
Curious Brain Thoughts.